Welcome to Learning Life Skills Together. This is our weekly community Zoom meeting where our guests help us to go deeper into the 4 life skills and open up a huge array of chances to practice them. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly Zoom our weekly Zoom meeting number 27. And I have with me in the studio tonight the painter Gregory Blue, who is fresh off of a project looking at one of the beautiful spots in Chester County, the Stroud Preserve. And so we're going to move from nature and Gregory's experience of nature into the visual realm. And so Gregory's going to lead us through some of the scenery, and the seasons of the Stroud Preserve. And so this is a way for us to sort of get ourselves centered, to use our attention. So this is the first of our skills. And so as we bring attention to what we see, we're going to put it up on the screen. And so I should note that Spotify does allow for video now, so we've posted it that way, or will post it that way on our Spotify account, and you could also find it on YouTube. And so those are the 2 best ways to see today's meeting. So when we're using our attention visually, we have something to focus on and somewhere to allow our eyes to move and go. And things happen as we do that inside us. So we see what's there. Gregory is a very good painter, and so you may also feel and smell what's there as well. And so you can notice that inside you as well. Because remember, our skill of attention is attention to what's outside us and what's inside us. And so I'm going to hand this over to Gregory now to give us a few clues as to what we'll be looking at.
Thank you, Don. And thank you for the opportunity to kind of attend this and speak to your listeners and talk a little bit about my work and how my work can be utilized to affect the practice as we talk about. Okay. All right. So I have been a landscape painter most of my adult life. I've spent a lot of time doing what is called painting plein air, or painting out of doors. And that is literally going out into nature with a easel and my paints and brushes and painting directly from nature. It's a really enjoyable experience. It's a really challenging experience. It's remarkable how much you learn. And this is really what I consider to be the primary way that I use the practice, because everything that I am putting down on the canvas, the way that I see color, all comes from long periods. I have spent most of my adult life learning how to see and observing the world around me. And I've discovered that when you do that, you very much have to be in the moment. You have to be present. You have to be very much aware of your surroundings, or else you're going to miss out on a lot of the details and a lot of the truly miraculous things that go on in the world. I was very fortunate. Most of the work that I do involves rural scenes, fields, farmlands, stands of trees. I love to paint trees probably more than I enjoy painting people or almost anything else. And so I was told, my daughter told me about Stroud Preserve. I was looking for a place to work. We had recently moved to Westchester, and she mentioned Natural Lands Stroud Preserve. And from the very first moment that I went there, I was kind of captivated with this space. It's just 3 miles west of Westchester, of the borough of Westchester, 570 acres of land that is protected, held as open space, and the organization Natural Lands owns and maintains it, and they open it up for public use. So it has a series of walking trails through it. It has a very diverse terrain. The Brandywine Creek flows through it. And so all of these things become kind of grist for the mill subjects that I can paint. And I started working there and started to accumulate work and got the idea of what would happen if I really spent some time there, really studied this place and got to know it intimately. What could I make from that? And this series of paintings was a concept that I evolved, the idea of looking at how the light changes over the course of the day, how it changes through the seasons of the year, and how both of those things, how time passes and the changes that occur to the landscape that, again, if you're not paying really careful attention, these things kind of slip right by and you don't get to see them, you don't get to notice them. So this was an opportunity for some really intense study, and I welcomed that. So this very first painting actually comes from a January morning. It was very cold, and the sun was really just coming up. And you can see the title there, Winter Eastern Glow. This is sunrise in the horizon, and I remember the experience of being out there. I did not paint this plein air. This came from a series of drawings and sketches. But these are rather large paintings, and so they have this kind of dynamic quality to them. So this was the very first painting that kind of introduces us to Stroud and introduces us to the beginning of the day. And part of my thinking in this was to take the viewer through this kind of process, through this cycle of the passage of time and that experience through observation. And Don, as you said in kind of your introduction, really part of the goal here is not only to get you to see the world as I see it in the colors that I see, but to feel it, to hear that quiet quality, the sense of just calm and solitude, and that feeling of being very, very cold.
Yeah. And I have to say that having now spent this time with my eyes there, I can feel sort of the crispness of that snow right up into the grass, or looks like grass at any rate, that's there in the foreground, and then you talked about the color, and I know we've had other conversations about color and how that glow sort of suffuses everything, and I don't know whether it makes the color or shifts the color or what it does, but everything seems to be touched by the glow in some way.
Well, we live in this, I like to think of it as an ocean of atmosphere. Like air is not all that dissimilar from water. It has a density to it, and it changes over time. And we are literally swimming through it in our day-to-day lives. And so when I think about painting and when I when I teach students to paint, I often talk about the idea of blending what you see I was taught when I was in school that they could teach me the technicality of painting, but what they were really trying to teach was how to see, how to see the world. And I have spent an inordinate amount of time. I am a kind of quiet and retiring by nature, and I love the process of just kind of stepping back and observing and watching things very deeply.
Yeah, and so that's really what this skill of attention that we've been talking about for a while now is. It's that taking a little step back and spending a moment, seeing what's there, what's actually there, or feeling what's actually there, or smelling what's actually there, and actually, now that we get into January and that kind of thing, I have a sense in my nostrils of how it must have been in that morning, too. So just that depth of attention, letting what's there come to you instead of you going out,
right?
Sending yourself out.
Yeah, and I think that's terrific because I really try very hard to engage all of my senses in the process. And I laugh a little bit because I'm not really 100% sure how that gets conveyed through paint. That's the one thing that's the mystery that I've never been able to solve.
Well, keep not solving it.
Well, it is it is the thing that kind of pulls you forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this next painting, you'll notice two things. The first one is this painting is square. The previous painting was a little bit more horizontal, rectangular, landscape format. And I'm just pointing that out because I'm going to come back to that after we go through these slides a little bit. But this is a mid-morning now, a couple of hours later. The sun has been up. It's on a kind of a dreary day in late February, early March. And it's overcast, but these pools of water formed. And what attracted me to this painting was this idea that I wanted to do a painting of the sky, but I didn't want to. If you'll notice in the composition, the sky at the top of the painting is really very minimal. But to tell more of the story of the sky, I used the pool, the puddle of water, as a mirror to reflect the sky and catch that. So it's one of the things that I felt was kind of interesting. That's what visually attracted me to this. But again, it's fascinating when you look at these paintings closely. A lot of the brushwork in the background is very, very abstract. Yet the way that we perceive that, our eyes tell us, oh, that's a clump of branches, or that's a tree trunk. That's the way it is. Our minds telling us something that we are familiar with, something that we know.
Yeah. Our minds do like to do that in a lot of different ways. We sometimes hear our loved ones that we've been with over a long time saying things maybe that we've heard before, but we don't always listen. There's that too.
It's easy to go on that autopilot.
Yeah.
So I think part of the joy and the pleasure for me when I am out painting is the fact that I am like full bore, fully into the world around me, and focused on that, and focused on the idea of kind of trying to capture this experience.
Yeah, and so that's where, I really wanted to bring you in to this giant conversation that we're having about all these skills, because looking again or looking more deeply is really, the skill that we're talking about when we're talking about attention. It's I can see it and I can see what I think I'm supposed to see, but then what do I actually see?
Right. It is this process of filtering over and over again the same data and the same information and repeating it and reflecting it with paint and pigment. And that's the thing that kind of communicates this idea.
Yeah.
So now we have moved on a little bit more, change in season, and we are now in spring, again, later morning. You see all the yellow flowers in the foreground, and this is, again, looking down a hill towards the gravel path in Strouds and then off into the hills. And all of the trees are just starting to bloom, so they are in their early spring garb, so to speak. The buds are just starting to come out, and I had these two trees in front of me. I am in love with sycamore trees.
And who from Chester County isn't?
Yeah, they're hard not to like. They always remind me. Sycamore trees or buttonwoods are the big white kind of gnarly trees that we see spotting all over the region, particularly out in some of the more rural areas as you drive from town to town out in western Chester County. And they are absolutely gorgeous. They remind me of these gnarly hands that are kind of gripping the sky. That's how I think about them. And I just thought it was a fascinating foil here because they kind of bloom very late, and all of the other trees were starting to blossom behind them, and yet this tree, didn't have any buds yet on it, and so it was still kind of the bare, bleak leftover from winter against all of this new life and new growth.
Yeah. So one of the things that I saw when I first looked at it, I thought fall in the background, and then as I was realizing that it's spring, that reddish purple color, is sort of there in both of those time periods.
Right.
It's really, just having lived here all my life, it's like that's kind of a marvelous thing.
And it's interesting, Don, that you mention about having lived here all of your life. These are the things that we can so easily take for granted.
Yeah.
These are the things that happen, and we can be distracted and thinking about all of the other things that are going on in our lives. Yet I think it's important every now and again to just take a moment and commune with nature.
Yeah, to ground ourselves in what's really here. That's one of the keys to the second skill, actually, to emotion regulation, is to be where you are. Yeah.
So this is now more the middle of the year. This painting I entitled "The Road in the Sky" for the obvious reason. This is looking back down the main path in Stroud Preserve back towards the public parking area along Creek Road. And it's a big June billowy cloud sky in the middle of the afternoon. Sun's out, bright, vivid, starting to cast some shadows from the trees on the left there. But everything is kind of flooded with light, and you have these big clouds that are just kind of rolling over you. It's this grand Pennsylvania spring sky or summer sky.
Yeah. I can feel that too. Now
this is I tend to try to be a little bit more practical. So in the summer months, when it starts to get hot, I head into the woods because it's cooler.
There you go.
And this I've just found fascinating. I call it moss socks because that's kind of what they reminded me of, this kind of fuzzy green stuff on the bottom of these tree roots. And I was just fascinated by the contrast against the forest floor, all these vivid greens starting to come up against the browns and the oranges of the leaves from last fall.
Yeah.
This is in August now, moving on to the latter part of the summer. And again, it was just all of these shades of green against the purple of the forest floor. And it was this beautiful experience. My love for trees comes out, and I am just fascinated how much trees communicate with each other and take care of each other. This is my inner druid coming out.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I am always fascinated by is how the elders kind of fall to the forest floor, and then around them sprout the new growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as they're consumed and brought back up again. Yeah, it's really when you see something that green and that rich, there's a feeling that happens. I was just speaking with my staff, and we were talking about the fact that we're going to be outside with a lot of our events and things for learning life skills together across the summer here, and that the being in nature part of just doing an event outside really has an effect on you, and just seeing has an effect on you. The fact that I was getting to is that they did a study of the kinds of paintings that they put in hospitals and what gets sort of graffitied and what gets destroyed and what doesn't. And there is very little destruction or touching of images from nature, like this rich greenness we're drawn to, and we just have a built-in love for it.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that, because I'm aware of some of those studies, and I know that they have done a lot of work of putting art that represents, and it has to be representational of nature,
right?
Natural images of leaves, insects, animals. And they found that patients actually recuperate more quickly.
Yes.
In that environment, which I just find really fascinating. Some similar data, the Natural Lands folks realized that as soon as we went into the pandemic, because you could be outside, so many people in the use of their preserves just went up exponentially.
Yeah.
Because people were just trying to get out and get back into nature, because it is the thing, we recuperate ourselves from that. It nourishes our soul.
Yeah. It refocuses our attention. It brings our attention back from all of the crazy stuff that we can get off into. Brings us back to something that's real, something that has a scent, something that has a feel. Yeah.
So now we have moved on to autumn. I am very fortunate that I get to, as we've been talking, I have all of this beautiful landscape around me, and Chester County is one of the most beautiful areas that I've ever seen. And I'm very fortunate to live in this area. But in addition to just painting the trees and painting the fields, I'm also painting light. And I like to play this game with light a lot. I like to move light around. So in this particular painting, one of the things, and this is a composition that I have repeated quite often, is I like this idea of putting light over on the right-hand side of the painting there in about the middle, just drawing your eye to that edge and then moving it through the rest of the painting in very subtle ways. But it's playing this game of, what happens when the clouds kind of billow over the sun and these shadows come rolling across the earth. How do we experience that? And how it exaggerates the terrain and makes it stand up that much more. So
Yeah, there's that sense of as you're looking, you see this beauty, you are moved by it, and it is moving.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
sense of the cloud shadows going over. We don't always think of them as that either.
Right. Yeah. Unless you are, it becomes much more obvious if you are in a mountain area and have a long vista. But if you are standing under the cloud, under the shadow itself, and then looking into the light, that is another metaphor, if you will.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's just taking us back again and again to how we're grounded by nature and how that has great value in our own emotional regulation.
One of the interesting things that has really attracted me to this notion is the idea that even though you are standing in shadow, there is still light in the shadow, and that's where all of the mystery is. That's where all the interest lives.
Yeah.
So it's again, it's the yin and yang, the contrasts. It's how we balance everything and deal with how we perceive the world. It's just a fascinating.
Yeah.
Now here we are at this is the other end of the day. This is evening, and the sun is starting to sink low on the horizon. And one of the things that I love is this quality of light that is created because you have the rays of the sun and the light almost in these strong horizontals or diagonals, and then you have all of the trees that are upright and vertical, and they intersect and make these really fascinating colors. So I find that to be very interesting.
You really have to stop with this one and let it work on you. I'm noticing that the way as you were talking, the verticals and the horizontals and that big diagonal that comes in there, and to see that and then to see the light. It's placed there.
Yeah, you almost get the feeling as if you're looking out a window at this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it gives you a particular feeling. And for me, it does have that end of day feeling, that evening feeling. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what of it is. Maybe it's the darkness where the trees are.
Right.
That makes me feel that. But I definitely have a body reaction to it. That, oh yeah, okay.
So
we're settling in.
One of the things that was interesting about this group of paintings, and the reason that I kind of selected them, was I wanted to kind of demonstrate how I think and processed this whole experience of Stroud. And I was very intentional about organizing these paintings and putting this series together. So I had these thoughts, and I started to execute it. I called attention to the idea that some of the paintings were rectangular and a couple of them were square. And the interesting thing is that even though I am planning this work out, quite often in the process of developing these paintings, because the way that I work is I go out and I paint plein air, and I paint very small paintings, studies, if you will. I have to do that rather quickly because the light changes so fast.
Yeah.
It is remarkable just how fast change occurs. And then I come back to my studio and I start to plan these grand, larger paintings, and they are informed by the smaller paintings that I'm making. Yeah. But quite often, the spirit moves you in different ways, and you kind of go to the idea of, well, maybe a rectangle isn't going to work here. Maybe we're going to try a square. We're going to try something different. And so I think one of the things that comes from being present, being in the moment, is also the ability to adapt and respond to the information in front of you in a way that you may not always consider at first, but it is this idea of adaptability and kind of being able to be flexible, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm hearing your process there of going out, taking these short time sketches.
Yes.
And
exactly.
then going back and going over those and seeing where that might lead you or what you've learned.
Exactly.
Maybe. And so it dovetails with what we're sort of talking about when we talk about this life skill of attention and how you would use it with your child, how you would share it with your child. Because the possibilities of, a 6-year-old sitting for an hour and making a number of sketches is probably pretty slim. So we've really been talking with people about, what we're talking about is what can you do in 5 minutes?
Right.
What can you do in 10 minutes? And so what can I notice not only about what's going on around me, which might include a child running across that, I don't know where, and the feeling that I have, that arises out of that scene. So I can learn a lot about me.
Yes.
And a lot about, sort of how I work by just paying that kind of attention that you're talking about. And I can reflect on it later, too.
Right.
Once I've gone and gotten the kid and brought him back.
Well, I think in a way, this idea of being present and in the moment and kind of modeling that for our children is certainly a critical and important skill to teach them, and both of you benefit in that process.
Absolutely.
I am fortunate enough to have children myself, and
you've done the experiment.
So yes, I've been able to. I like to think that I've been able to influence them a little bit, pass some of these ideas along.
Yeah, and so that 5 minutes of being present in the landscape, or 5 minutes of being present face to face with your child, and seeing what's happening in that landscape is also of great value and is a way of demonstrating that, sharing that skill.
Right. I think that being in the moment, being outside, for example, walking with your child through the park, and maybe if they are old enough, asking them what they see and what colors they see. It has always been fascinating to me that I hold on to the belief that we can teach ourselves to see color, that children are great because they are so direct and uninhibited, and if you ask them what color a tree is, they tell you it's green. They tell you the tree bark is brown. They tell you that, snow is white, the sky is blue. We all know the litany of kind of symbols, if you will, that we are taught as children. Yet, when you start to really examine the world, what you discover is, well, tree bark is anything but brown. It's green and orange and red and purple and yellow, and you can begin to see all of those colors. And the more that you see them, the more colors you see.
Yeah. You show up for them, and then they show up for you.
Right.
I mean, this is sort of a major theme here of the attention skill, which is to go beyond that immediate, as you say, like symbol. Okay, snow is white. Well, not when you look at it necessarily. No. Probably not.
And I mentioned earlier this idea about observing what is in front of you, observing the subject in front of you, and then taking what you know about it. So, for example, grass is not necessarily green. Sometimes grass is blue because it's reflecting the color of the sky. Mm-hmm. Snow can be a wide variety of colors because it too is reflecting the sky, but it is also reflecting the sun. And so you see these warm colors of yellows and oranges mixed with the blues and the violets. And it's those contrasts that a painter can use to make those suggestions to you that enables your brain to kind of say, oh, now I get it. Yeah. Because I'm all about making the illusion of 3 dimensions on a 2-dimensional plane.
Yeah. And so that idea of looking beyond, I guess, seeing the expected and then continuing to look. And when we talk about this attention skill, it's really that continuing to look part that we're trying to get people to do. Let me look further at this. Let me help my child to look further at what's going on right now.
Right.
And see maybe not just the stereotype or not just the idea, but the actual thing. And, we need to do that with our children to see them whole, yes. Right? And not to see, oh, I know your history, kid. I know every minute of it. Yeah. And don't try to pull that on me. It's no, what's actually happening right now is what matters, and it may not be at all what you think.
Oh.
As both of us parents know.
More times than not, it's not what you think. And in a way, isn't that what keeps life interesting? Isn't that what keeps it all exciting?
Hey, if you can wake up to a world that is surprising every day, you want to embrace it. You want to keep going. You think you're waking up to the same old. You're probably not. Chances are good that you're not, but if you keep thinking that way, how do you step out? That's the total skill, right? And what you've brought to us is a focused way of really thinking about it and using it and creating something else that's in our study here. We're talking about paying attention and going for a walk. Right? That's sort of the first thing that we've been dealing with and working with. And the next thing has been noticing what our emotions are and being willing to work with them a little bit and having the experience of awe and beauty. And so you're really bringing us a way of having that experience of awe and beauty using our attention.
I count myself as being very, very fortunate. I I've come to this place in my life where I really feel as though I'm trying to simplify my life down to that, much the way that I behaved when I was a child. That kind of sense of awe and wonder, I'm still captivated by it. You know, I see clouds in the sky. The last couple of days, the clouds have been absolutely phenomenal, and I just marvel at them. And you know, it is being in that moment, but then being drawn into it to the point almost of excluding other things. So I'm lucky because that's what I get to do every day.
To have a chance to be absorbed, and something it's really important for us to be able to do, and it's an important skill for our children to have, because you know, I mean, quite frankly, our attention is so fragmented now. You know, more so than I remember as a child. I would just disappear with my fishing rod off to the pond all day and sit there.
Well,
seeing the reflections of the trees in the water.
Yes, and then watching the things kind of float just underneath the surface, and how the sky is mirrored in the surface of the water, but now you can look down through that.
Yeah.
I mean, those are like fascinating visual.
One of my favorite things in life has been to teach first my wife and then my daughter how to look at the water and then see what's under it without wearing polarizing glasses. You know, just to actually be able to do that.
As you might imagine, I shun sunglasses.
I would imagine.
Just in general principle.
Yeah.
But I'm often so amazed at the advantages, and we were just discussing the advantages of technology earlier, and the fact that we are putting on a podcast and promoting, having this conversation with all of these people in this moment is absolutely incredible and amazing. But our technology has not left room for us to be bored any longer.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I have discovered in my short life so far, boredom is where creativity comes from, and it's in those moments when I get to daydream, or where I get to study the paintings that I've made outside, the plein air paintings. It's fascinating to me that when I work outside, I often come back, and when I complete the painting in place, when I'm standing outside and I have just finished the painting and I get ready to clean up and pack up and pull all my things together, I can't see it very well.
Yeah.
So I have to bring it back to my studio and take a moment and sit down and look at it, and then it all comes back to me. And the paintings that I am able to get that sensation from, sometimes I rework them. Those are the ones that ultimately become the big studio, the large studio paintings. They're the ones. And usually it's several of those that get kind of put together. Yeah. And so it's a fascinating process of just study and restudy and thinking, and all of these things that we're talking about, and how they all kind of come together.
Yeah, and they come together in that place of taking that step back. When you take that sketch and bring it back and take a look at it hours or days later, you have that little bit of distance just from the time, and then you also have the distance that you've trained yourself to take, that stepping back.
And I think it's also about engaging our other senses in the experience. You mentioned that you can kind of feel the air and get a sense of the cold or the light or the warmth of the sun, and trying to engage our other senses into that experience.
Yeah,
Are also
yeah.
critically important.
Totally. So, I ask all of our guests to give us, I have been calling it a word of wisdom, but for you, I think I want to ask you for a watchword, just to keep it maybe a little more painterly. What should we watch for in our lives?
I think the best advice that I could probably give along those lines would be try not to become captive to your thoughts. Try to remain open to your observations, to see the world, to see more of the world, to see as much of the world as you possibly can, because each moment is like a snowflake. It's unique.
Yeah, yes. Each moment of the natural world, each moment of that natural world, which is our children, deserve that kind of a look. That what was it again? Don't be captive to your thoughts. So really open up to what's actually there. You think? Yeah.
Don't project about the way things are going.
That's what I was getting to.
Yeah.
It's not how it's going to be, because it isn't. It hasn't been yet. Yeah.
Right. Well, they say that what screws us up the most is the image in our heads of the way things should be.
Should be, absolutely. Yeah. And so this watchword, kind of holds true both for the attention skill and the emotion regulation skill. If we get caught up in our thoughts and can't step back, we keep churning the emotion that we've got going. As we step back from all the thoughts about it, as we step back from knowing what it is. Oh, I know what this is. This is anger. Well, I challenge you.
Right.
Step back a moment and actually look. Give it the test. Look inside. See what's really there, what's really going on. Sometimes it ain't what you think.
Well, I would agree. It's rarely what you think, and it is difficult.
This is a life skill.
Yes.
Not only is it a skill for life, it's a skill that you have to develop for your whole life.
Yes.
Yeah. You spend your whole life developing.
Works in progress.
Aha. There we go. There's the tie-in.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Really appreciated the insight, the conversation, and the marvelous images, Gregory.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it very much.